Good evening, everybody. And I've been given a message to start. I felt quite awkward sitting here because I've been dying to welcome Victoria Prentis to the RAU this evening. And I wanted to just say, first of all, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to the students about elms, amongst other things. And I'm really looking forward to it because I'm sure it's going to be incredibly informative. I'm not trying to make you feel in the least bit nervous, but some of the questions that I already had sight of sounded to be really interesting amongst anything else. But I thought if it's okay, I would like to introduce you with your, I think I can describe it as nothing but a stellar career. So Victoria was elected as Conservative MP for Banbury, so not very far away in 2015. And what always amazes me about our political colleagues is that how they swap from different areas. So having worked in transport and also in the Justice Department and on the Select Committee for Justice, has been appointed to what of course is the most important department. It is definitely, which is as Under-Secretary of State for DEFRA in February 2020 at, you know, it feels like we run these expressions out very easily, but at this absolute critical time for UK food and farming, and it must be an incredibly exciting job as we go through this really, really important transition. I'm amazed at the list of responsibilities. I often think that my role is about multitasking, but this seriously is about multitasking because it covers farming, fisheries, the agriculture bill, and what we're going to talk a lot about today, which is environmental land management, the common agricultural policy, and the food strategy, which obviously Tom here is involved with. So it's really the science as well underpinning the the way we farm in the UK and the policies around that, and it's having to keep abreast of all those very important developments, and also agencies like the AHDB, critically important bodies really, which are going to make a huge difference as we move forward in the support of the industry. So it's going to be one of the most important subjects tonight that you're going to talk about. Charlotte wrote this down for me and I hadn't heard of it as being described this way, but that elms has been described as the Schrodinger's cat of agricultural policies, which I thought was a good way of putting it. So it's the only game in town. So, and it is really because we're wearing my other hat. I do sit on our local LEPS, agri-food and business group, and you see it firsthand how people are really challenged by this change that's coming ahead. And of course, there's 25% of farmers who are going to embrace it, will understand what it means for them already, and they'll be in front of the game. But there's a lot who have a journey to go on as we go through the transition period. And our host for this evening is Charlotte, who's a student on our MSc Sustainable Food and Agriculture Policy course. Charlotte is a trained journalist, which is why she is going to lead us so skillfully through this evening. And it's wonderful to read that. I didn't realize, Charlotte, that you'd worked for Radio 4 and you'd been a financial reporter for the FT. So I think why I feel very particularly sort of proud to be introducing this is that not long after I arrived, we applied for the Catalyst programs from government to actually do what we felt was a really important thing, which was to think differently and to put in place different programs with different subject titles. Because at the time, I remember writing, you know, that this was an incredibly important opportunity to think differently about the way we use land. Now, at the time, a blended learning program such as this one was seen to be something different. And at the beginning, it was quite difficult to attract students to the courses. But of course, now it's something that actually, when we think about it, it was we were ahead of the game, which I'd like to say the RAU always is. So I'm going to hand over to Charlotte now, who's going to host us through the evening. It is very much our students' evening. And so thank you again, Victoria, and thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, and my thanks to the Minister for joining us this evening in what I hope is going to be an invigorating session of discussion about all things elms and generally the future of the United Kingdom's agricultural sector. Thank you very much, Professor Price, for your opening remarks and for your welcome. A couple of things. First of all, I'll just run through the format. The format will be as follows. So we will have an opening statement by the Minister, who will give us an update on ELMS, and then that will be followed by a Q&A session with questions from students and staff. And after that, at the end of the Q&A session, we will have a final statement from the Minister. Next thing, housekeeping. Please keep your phones on silent or off so that we have no interruptions. The other thing, in terms of the Q&A session, it'll go as follows. When I call you to ask your question, please give your full name and the name of the course that you're studying for. And also keep it brief. We're delighted to have the Minister with us today. This is a fantastic opportunity to get information straight from the horse's mouth. And thank you for sparing the time to join us this evening. Let's make the best of it. And over to you, Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte, very much, and Joe, and indeed all of you for coming this evening. It's really great to be even not in real life, but even virtually with the Royal Agricultural University. I have to confess that I have a daughter who is sniffing around your courses at the moment, so racing and bloodstock. So it would be really good when you do ask your questions to hear from you, as Charlotte said, A, what you're studying, and B, what you want to go on to do, because this session is very much aimed at you guys, actually, you who will be the farming influencers of the future. So really do tell me a little bit about yourself when you ask your question. I think it makes it more interesting for everybody. I will tell you very briefly about myself so you know where to pitch it. I represent Banbury in Parliament, which is an enormous honour because I've lived here all my life. I was born here. My parents farm, well, my father still continues to farm in a village about 2 miles from where I live. We've got 450 acres of mixed farm. When I was growing up, we had sheep. We got rid of them in the end. We had a pedigree South Devon herd that we got rid of about 15 years ago. We found it very difficult to get weekend cover. We had 11 acres of plums always, so I'm always very interested in horticultural questions. And now these days we mainly farm arable generally, and also quite productive holiday cottages, if I can put it that way. I personally smallhold where my house is, so I'm very involved in the running of the other farm. And I grow apples and pears and keep Swarble sheep and pigs to the table and occasionally the odd longhorn and so on. I had never considered myself to be a farmer. I was very much somebody who farmed at weekends and worked away. And it was not until I was elected that I arrived in Parliament and was genuinely shocked by the lack of experience, the lack of farming experience around me in Westminster. I think those of us who have grown up in farming communities and who are passionate about what we eat and how we get it to the table are often surprised by others around us at work, if you work outside agriculture, and their level of knowledge. And I found myself at Westminster at first thinking, well, I should do justice events and be involved in justice matters, because that was very much my day job when I was at work. I ended up as head of justice and security for the government and was a civil servant, but for a very long time, for 17 years. But I increasingly found myself being drawn to agricultural matters, which very much are where my heart is. So as Joe said, I really do think I've got one of the most important and best jobs in government. I really do. So where we are is, this is challenging for all of us. All my life that I can remember, we have been rewarded as farmers by the Common Agricultural Policy. We didn't have to do much for that. We just owned a certain amount of land that we measured. Occasionally, and at times on our own farm, we've applied for higher stewardship or schemes similar to that. Those were often very bureaucratic. You received very severe penalties if you didn't quite fit whatever it was that you needed to fit in terms of the size of your hedgerow or the size of your set aside. And really, they didn't ever feel like they were encouraging us as farmers in a particular direction. We've now left the European Union and we have the opportunity and indeed the responsibility of setting our own agricultural policy. Things are going to be completely different. And I feel very strongly that whoever has my job in 5 or 10 or 15 years is going to have to go to the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the future and argue for our industry, is going to have to say, we need public support. We need you to give me taxpayers' money to spend on farmers. And we are going to have to make our case in a way that we haven't had to do for 40 years, because effectively the European agricultural lobby did it very successfully for us. So we're fortunate in this Parliament to have been promised the same amount of money each year to spend on agriculture. I'm confident that we've got the ear of the Chancellor and he's on our side, and the Chief Whip is as well. We're very fortunate with those in charge at the moment, and the Prime Minister, as you know, has visited 2 farms in the last week, but understands how important we are as a sector. But I am very, very conscious that the changes that we make now have got to be have got to be strong enough to survive future governments of all colours, and to enable our industry really to hold its head high and to argue for the support that we need in order to do the things that we need to be doing. So in shorthand, we're going to support farmers in the future. We're going to give them public money, as you know, for producing public goods. Those public goods are slightly set out in the Ag Act, which I had the pleasure to take through Parliament last year, but they are flexible and we will be able to build on what's in there in our future policies. So in brief, and this is very brief and I'll look forward to going into it in much more detail in questions, food is obviously at the heart of what we do as farmers. We produce food. I think there will be a very big conversation about food this year, not before time, probably everybody on this call would say. DEFRA has commissioned Henry Dimbleby to do a review of the country's food strategy. He's going to report finally in July this year, and then the government has asked for 6 months to reply to what recommendations he makes. We will also concurrently be doing a really in-depth data-driven review of our food security, and I mean that in every sense of the word. Having enough food to eat in the country and also having enough food to eat on a household level. So every sense food security. And the other major piece of work we're doing in that area is a consultation on labelling as well, and some of you may have views on that. So food obviously is at the heart of what we do. The other public goods, because food is a good, it may be a private good, but it's definitely a good thing that we do as an industry. The other public goods that we are looking at are broadly environmental, but also to do with public access and engagement. So where the focus is in our new future farming policies is very much to do with the environment. Truthfully, one of the major criticisms, and this goes a bit to Charlotte's point, of the new policies is that we're not giving enough detail. There are reasons for that. It's not just because we know things and we don't want to tell everybody. It's because these policies are genuinely evolving. So we're dripping out comms, and I will tell you a bit today about the activity we've got over the next, well, this year, for example. I've got a list in front of me of what we're working on this year that I will read through later. but we need to work on the policies. We've set a direction of travel, and we will continue to give you information as we go about that direction of travel. But we need to work with those farmers, and we've got about 3,000 of them at the moment, testing elements of our strategy. We will build this up to probably 5,000 farmers towards the end of this year. Vast number of people in the industry already involved in testing things. For those who are desperate to get involved but who haven't been lucky enough to be part of a pilot so far, we would really strongly encourage them into countryside stewardship schemes, which will, I promise, transition smoothly across to the future farming schemes when the time becomes right. So what are we trying to do? At the lowest tier level, so SFI as it's known, Sustainable Farming Incentive, we are trying to get everyone involved. I make the biggest environmental gains, so I make the best case for me to go and argue with the Chancellor with, if almost everybody who receives BPS at the moment, and some who don't receive BPS but may well be included in the future, if everybody joins in. And we're very much looking at SFI as being an entry level. We can go into some detail about the standards that we've set out so far. They don't cover everything at all. For example, we have an arable and horticulture standard. We might well want to look at just having a horticultural standard as well in the future. And as we go through, it will become clearer that this is really a sea change in the way that we're rewarded for farming. In the future, it will be a much more holistic and whole farm approach. It'll be much more carrot and less stick. We will look at what is going on the ground, and instead of measuring hedgerows and bits of set aside, we will look at the overall picture of the farm and what is being produced there, both environmentally and in food terms. So that's some idea of the SFI. Then the middle tier, if you like, will be a sort of more catchment approach. It'll often involve working with other farmers in your area, for example, to create a wildlife corridor. Though truthfully, at all levels of our new schemes, there will be opportunities to share land with wildlife. One of my own personal pet projects is to encourage a buffer strip either side of watercourses, for example. That's something that really many of us can do. We have done on part of our farm, but not on all of it. And if we were to allow, 3 or 4 meters each side of a stream or river, and fence that, which is something that the government might have to consider paying for, we would really, really make an enormous difference. In the middle tier of our policies, we'd look at strips that went across farms that were probably a bit wider than that. So, for example, here we have some meadow saxifrage on a water meadow, and I might well want to ring up the farmer next door to discuss whether he wanted to promote that and keep it safe, as well as me, and how we could work together to do that. And then at the highest tier of our new policies, there will be some land sparing. Most of our policies are firmly in the producing food land sharing space, but that we are going to do a few projects which involve change of use effectively. So I suspect they will be to do with locking carbon into peat areas, for example. There will be, in this year, there will be 2 projects that are chosen, 2 estates or farms that are chosen to do that, and there will be opportunities to apply. So as well as that, I hope that we will do, and this may be of interest to you, more work on young entrants to the profession and encouraging young entrants. I very much hope that there will be money available for that. We'll be looking at delinking and the lump sum consultations. So that's encouraging people out of the profession at the other end so that land becomes available. We will be a large amount of money has been set aside to help with R&D, equipment and tech, and people will be able to bid into that for grants. As you can hear, there is a vast array to talk about and a vast array going on. So I think it's probably better that I leave it there and go to you so that you can guide the discussion in any way you like. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very comprehensive update there. The first question I'm going to ask is by Tom, who I believe wasn't able to join us, so I promised I would ask the question on his behalf. His question probably covers, you probably have to repeat some of the things you've said, because his question is quite pertinent to some of the issues that you've raised in your opening statement. So the question is, Tom Gerard is an MBA in Innovation in Sustainable Food and Agriculture. And his question is, will farmers have to commit to ELMs within a relatively small window, or will it be left open so they can join over the long term?
Well, we've got a 7-year period of transition before us. Truthfully, we haven't made any decisions about closing the scheme at the end of that, and I can't see why we would. So I would very much hope that this is an ongoing proposition. What I would encourage people to do if they're interested in environmental schemes is, if you haven't been successful in being chosen to be part of a pilot, then for goodness sake, apply for a CS scheme now, and we will transition you over when that becomes appropriate. So don't wait. If you want to do it now.
My next question, or rather, sorry, our next question is from Amelia Preston. Amelia, over to you.
Hi, I'd like to know about the RPA system, and if you've got any plans to upgrade that to kind of a digital mapping system so that farmers can actually map their own changes, just going forward with your sustainable farming incentive, so they could say map it on their own, like the land app kind of system.
No, absolutely, Amelia. And for you guys, this is just perfectly normal, isn't it? I mean, everything you do digitally and with your phones. I work really closely and really well with Paul Caldwell, who's in charge of the RPA at the moment. And in fact, he is completely embedded in all of our development of the new schemes. Because quite frankly, if they don't work operationally, they don't work, and we can't do them. So it is really important that whatever ideas we come up with, he can actually deliver. He is really on board with this completely different way of working for them, because after all, they've had to deliver the European schemes before now. So this is challenging, very challenging for him on a number of levels, but he is completely on board with it and is confident he'll be able to deliver it. Yes, we will absolutely be using our mobiles and our iPads to help with the way that the new systems are delivered. It's not so much enforced these days as delivered. So I very much hope that there will be a farm plan in the end for almost everybody, and that will be available both to you and to the RPA, or whoever is paying, as it were. And I very much hope that you will be able to upload or take a photo. There are now extraordinary apps that enable you to take a photo of your, of one tree in your orchard, for example, and replicate what the yield is likely to be for the whole orchard. And I'm sure that things like that will only continue to improve. So yes, very much that will be part of the way the new systems are delivered. It's very important that advisors are involved in the new schemes. So this is probably where a lot of you guys are going to come in, I hope, one day, because we will need to train and to help existing advisors, which many of us farmers, as you know, have, but also the new generation coming up, to help farmers, because we don't know everything, even though we may know our lands very well. I need, oh, hi Amelia, I've just seen you pop up. We need to be challenged. I mean, we haven't fenced our watercourse, for example. I could do that if somebody encouraged me to do it. And I think that there is it's going to be much more holistic. So you're going to sit down at your farm kitchen table, have a chat with your advisor. You might be the advisor, I don't know. And you're going to go on your land map and see what we've got. And you're going to say, well, you could do that there and you could do that there. And why don't we ring the farmer next door and see if he wants to come on board too? And that's the way that the policy is going to be specific. It's going to be very much farm up.
Thank you. Well, as the title of the event is Minister Meets the Influences of the Future, the RAU is the place to find those advisors who will help in the transitioning process. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is from Kate Drury. There are a couple of questions. And Minister, would you like them both at once or one after the other?
Probably one after the other.
Okay. Sorry, daft question. Right, Kate, over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you for your time today, Minister. My name is Kate Drury and I farm on the Leicestershire and Northamptonshire border. I'm a master's student at the RAU on the Sustainable Food and Agricultural Policy course. I must say that the course and the RAU definitely gave me the confidence to run in a very hard fought election, and I'm very proud to say that I'm the newly elected producer board member for British Wool.
Oh, brilliant! Oh, how nice to meet you!
Yeah,
oh, that's really, really good. Well done.
It's nice to break a 70-year ceiling, I have to admit.
Well, I was just thinking that so far on this call, we've only heard female voices, which is not something that we used to do in agriculture.
Very true. So I'm afraid mine are both sheep related. So my first question is, the national sheep flock could go down in numbers with restoration and preservation of peat bogs and tree planting, leading to destocking in upland areas. Likewise, numbers could stabilise with carbon sequestration through grass lays and livestock in arable rotations. What happens with elms will be a key factor. How can government ensure ancillary trades such as wool processing are not hostage to fortune here?
Yeah, oof. Well, I've got some sheep outside and we're very lucky. Lamb prices are, as you know, very, very good at the moment. And of course, I hope that that will continue to be the case. But I think you raise a valid point. One is about wool, which can be, as you know, almost valueless. And we need to look hard at ways in which we deal with that, because it's a great product. It has many, many possible uses. And we, you know, I'm very keen to work with British Wool, who I met recently, very much newly invigorated board. I'm absolutely thrilled you're on it. I really am. But I'm looking forward to working with them. One extremely exciting idea out of the many we discussed was working on biodegradable tree surrounds made of wool, which ticks about every box there is to tick, I think. So there is definitely, I hope, a brighter future than there has been in recent years for wool itself. Lamb, I think, is certainly looking good at the moment, and I think that will continue to be the case. As you know, it's British Beef Week this week, so we've been having quite a lot of discussions in Parliament and indeed nationally, I think, about the importance of eating meat and dairy as part of a balanced diet. And the NFU have put out some excellent communications about how things fit in and herbal lays, etc., and carbon sequestration in pasture. There is definitely more that we as the livestock sector need to do in this space, and I don't think we should be shy about that. I think we've got to be careful about the language that we use. I think it's very unlikely that we'll reach net zero in livestock, but that is not to say that livestock doesn't have lots of other advantages that we need to talk about in biodiversity terms, in the fact that it fits and creates much of the landscape that we love, in the fact that it's delicious and nutritious food, for example. And I think it's important that we talk wider than carbon when we talk about livestock. That is not to say that I don't think the industry as a whole should be ambitious on carbon. There is much we can do in other parts of the industry to help with carbon sequestration, but probably I think we've got to face up to the fact that while we can reduce methane emissions effectively, we won't be able to eradicate them, or not in a way that we would feel conducive to animal welfare. Can I put it that way? So I think, and I think we've got to be honest as well about importing harm. So offshoring, as it were, and importing feedstuffs that have not been produced as well as they would be here. We have a very sustainable way of producing livestock in this country. And I think we should be proud of that, but we shouldn't pretend it can hit net zero tomorrow, because it really can't.
Very keen on the time that we've got. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, we didn't really get uplands, but we will.
Kate, can you launch into your second question, please?
I will do, Charlotte, thank you. And just on tree coverings, I think we must ask, is it British wool, when we ask if it's wool? So my second question, farmer cooperatives, of which British wool is one, provide resilience and risk sharing, and will likely play an important role in the UK agricultural transition. How will DEFRA support co-ops and producer organisations?
Okay, I still want to answer your upland question, but I will go on to sorry, Kate, I think we'll have to have a chat another day. But I will try and drag myself off sheep and onto producer organisations. Sure, they have a role. Definitely, they have a role. You'll have seen that last year we consulted, for example, on dairy processing. And I think that was a useful consultation to have. And one of the points that came out of that consultation was how well farmer co-ops like Arla deliver for farmers, for example. So yes, we need to look at this across the board. Not all are equal, truthfully, and some have been more helpful than others, but definitely I think buying groups, cooperatives, however you want to phrase it, have a future for our industry. It is no longer a world in which we work as individuals and just look inward on our farms.
Super, thank you. You mentioned, Minister, earlier when you were answering the first question, you mentioned the importation of lamb and other sheep products. So the next question is to do with, it has an international aspect to it, international trade, and that comes from Joost Wetterings. Joost, can you introduce yourself and your course and ask your question, please?
Sure thing. I mean, despite my very Dutch name, I'm actually British. I'm currently doing the MBA in Innovation and Sustainable Food and Agriculture. And this is proving a very fantastic opportunity because I'm taking a bit of a career change. I've just been overseas for a very long time and actually now looking to leverage all of this experience plus agriculture to work with either an impact investor like CDC Group or some of the others which are now entering in the space. I have a privilege in that I have a foot on the other side of the channel, as it were, and it's really amazing to see how trend-setting and that the UK is with all of its the new ideas behind ELMS. The UK seems to be really kind of putting itself into position that anything made or built or bred in Britain is better. With all the trade talks that are going on, particularly with the US, I'm very curious about the dynamics about food standards and access. I mean, what is the ambition about the strategy to get UK foodstuffs, for instance, into the US?
I think we're very ambitious in this space, and it's really good to meet you because I'm sort of hoping that with your heritage you might You might be one of the people who's the future of British horticulture, but I'm only making that up because you come from the Netherlands, or part of you comes from the Netherlands. Yeah, I am very, very ambitious. At the moment, as you know, we produce just under 60% of what we consume in the UK. In some areas, we pretty much, it works out evenly. We consume what we eat. In others, such as horticulture, fruit and veg, I am absolutely certain we could do a lot more. Brexit officially, in legal terms, does not give us the opportunity to start talking about buying British, but I think it very much fits with the zeitgeist, if I can use that word, at the moment. We have talked for many years about buying local and buying sustainable. What we find actually cuts through with the consumer is buying British. So I think that probably will be the conversation that we have as we hope, come out of the pandemic this summer. We've seen real changes in buying over the course of the pandemic. People have been at home, very conscious of what they're eating. Some of the population has had more money to spend, some sadly less money to spend, but those who have had the time and energy to focus on their food have really, really enjoyed sourcing local food. And farm shops and box schemes, as we know, have gone through the roof and are doing really well. So I welcome that interest from other people, truthfully, in the food that they eat. And I think we need to really capitalize on that and push that for all we're worth as we come out of the pandemic. That very much fits with this great big food conversation that I think we'll be having after Henry Dimbleby's report and before the government's response to it this summer. In terms of our trade deals, we are very ambitious there too. And we are all equally ambitious that we will not compromise our standards. I think we need to be honest about the position at the moment, which is that we do import goods which are produced to a lesser standard than ours sometimes. So, for example, we do, because it's been very difficult to grow as much oilseed rape in recent years, import neonate treated oilseed rape to crush. We do import feedstuffs that have GM products in, for example, that we would not permit people to grow here. So I think we know that in the industry, but I think we possibly need to make sure that that is more widely accepted, and that is yet another reason for buying British, particularly in the animal welfare space, where we really do have higher standards and we're proud of them and we want to keep them, but sometimes people must accept they have to pay a bit of a premium for that.
Thank you very much. I need to move the conversation on along. Reference to food, the next question is about, makes reference to food waste and also a competitive edge for the UK and livestock. And the question is from Richard Lovemore. Sorry, Richard, I've just mangled your question there. So you've got the opportunity to put it right and ask it yourself much better than I alluded to.
Thanks very much for your time, Minister. So yeah, my name is Richard Lovemore. I'm also studying on the MBA, Sustainable Food and Agriculture. My background is in hospitality as a chef. So quite a different angle, and I'm quite passionate about food waste.
And where are you from, Richard?
South Africa.
I couldn't quite, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm also kind of having a little bit of a career change to a degree, a little bit out of service and keen to make a bigger impact when it comes to the food sector and food waste. But with this in mind, I'm quite interested in insect farming and the benefits that it has to...
Wow, I've never been asked that one before.
The environment. So my question is, are the government looking to update regulation surrounding food waste as a feedstock for insect farming to enable the UK to have a bit of a competitive edge over the EU and the rest of the world when it comes to producing animal feed, which is the demand for animal feed, specifically for poultry and aquaculture, is growing at a really rapid rate, and a lot of it is imported soy meal or fish meal. So yeah, it surrounds the amount of food waste that we have in the UK, and an opportunity to be able to give ourselves a competitive edge by updating regulation around that.
Now, that really is a good question. I'm glad I came. So are you familiar with the organisation WRAP, W-R-A-P? Sure, they're based in my constituency. I'm inordinately proud of them because, of course, they operate internationally. But the work they're doing on the circular economy, on food waste, for example, I think is really game-changing. And I'm proud that we can genuinely call ourselves leaders in this space. So my colleague, Rebecca Pow, who I would really encourage you to get along to come and talk to you, she's the Environment Minister at the moment, leads on food waste. She's a soil scientist originally, but she is truly passionate about food waste and how we manage it. And actually, that's a point that I wouldn't mind making generally. Charlotte will go mad with me. So she's the Minister for the Environment and I'm the Minister for Farming. We try to have almost all our meetings on future farming policy together. There is no gap in the department between protecting the environment and promoting farming. And it is really critical, and I think this does go to what you were asking, that we look at it in a joined up way. On insect farming, I agree that there are real opportunities. I don't know what decisions have been made, if any, about the specific issue that you're asking about to do with food waste. I'm really happy to find out. But I do know that we have had a lot of conversations, for example, in the fishing space, about the fish meal that comes in and where it comes from and what it's doing to the ocean bed as it's fished. And we have to look at the entire food chain when we consider environmental gains. And I am really, really passionate about transparency all the way up. There is no point in feeding foodstuffs that are causing environmental harm abroad and not talking about it. So I completely take the challenge from you. I see where you're going, and I think it's really exciting.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to a question from a member of staff, and I'll make allusion to your comment about bringing together environmental protection and farming and making sure that they run in concert with each other. So question from Dr. Jessica Stokes, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte, and good evening, Minister. It's lovely to meet you, and it's wonderful for students to have this opportunity to get together with you. It's a really special time. So I work at the REU actually in farm animal welfare, science and policy. So it's great to hear earlier references to our high welfare standards that we want to maintain and continue going forward, but also to the link in ELMS in your evidence pack around animal welfare. So I also work with students and farmers who are passionate about agroecology. So my question is just about giving you an opportunity to hear more from you about how ELMS can actually recognise and incentivise, for example, organic and regenerative farmers who are already on that journey.
Okay, that's a huge question and raises lots and lots of issues, and it's really good to meet you. With the specific issue of people who are already on board, so early adopters, if you like, in the organics and regenerative spaces, I really want to reassure people that if they are already in a scheme, an HLS scheme or a CS scheme, they will be transitioned painlessly into the new schemes. We're not sure exactly when, it'll be in a few years' time, but we will make sure that the process of transitioning is a painless one. And we would very much encourage people who want to get involved now to enter a CS scheme, because it will absolutely work with the new schemes. The new schemes will, I hope, though, be much easier to apply for in due course, because they'll be less formulaic, if you like. We've already made some simplifications. But yes, there is absolutely a role. We are determined that early adopters should not be penalised for being early adopters. And the other point that perhaps I should have made is that this is genuinely an evolutionary process. we're not going to get to a standard and stay there. This is one of the reasons why people who clamour for details of the new policy don't quite get it, because the details will change. So let's take the animal health and welfare pathway, which is absolutely integrated now in our future policies, I think rightly. We might at the moment not, we might allow farrowing crates, for example, but that doesn't mean that we'll continue to do so. And on that pathway, regulation may change over time, and I would expect that it would, truthfully. I've been looking in detail, and I think we will be consulting this year shortly on different aspects of slaughtering. And I think it's right that we have a fairly open and frank conversation about slaughtering. I don't know if that's an area you want to get into, Charlotte.
No, not quite. No, it's interesting. I mean, yes, regulation has got to be fluid, hasn't it? It's got to be fluid, and it's got to adapt to time as
so I would hope the policies will continue to move us, truthfully.
Yes, genau, exactly. I just suddenly realised, sorry, the German keeps
Charlotte doesn't know. I used to work for the CDU many years ago in Germany, so I can genau with the best of them.
You can genau back. Right, okay. I missed Kath Applin. I do apologise. I missed you. Please ask the Minister your question. Thank you.
That's fine. That's okay.
Hi,
thank you very much. Actually, I think that fits in quite well, following on from Jessica's question. So I'm a vet with a pharmaceutical company, and I'm on the MSc in Sustainable Food and Agriculture Policy.
Brilliant.
There's quite a lot of emphasis on co-design in ELMS, which there is on our course as well, which is good. So I'm interested in how you do genuinely co-design a project that's just so big and so diverse, and end up with something that's not overcomplicated and is accessible to people.
It's a challenge. And in fact, the team will tell you, I sit there at every meeting saying, this is too complicated. Will you stop behaving like the European schemes, essentially? Because what is so tempting is to write a list of standards and expect people to meet them. But that is completely not what we're going to be able to do, because then you get stuck. I mean, you know, I was not a Brexiteer, but I think we all have to accept that the CAP did not do much for either our productivity or our environment. And we really do now have an opportunity to move in a way that we haven't had for 40 years. So it is very exciting. In terms of developing the policy, I had a really good chat with a vet, a departmental vet, this afternoon for probably 3/4 of an hour about slaughter. So we come to this, well, we all come to this with our own experiences and preoccupations, truthfully. And one of mine has always been the way we slaughter, and whether or not we could do more on-farm slaughter, for example, with modern technology providing safeguards, truthfully. I was chatting that through with her in some detail this afternoon. And so, yes, we co-design with farmers, but we also have really good expert people in-house that we're able to draw on. And she's in fact looking at a house quite near where I live, and said she might pop over when my sheep shearer was here this weekend. So, you know, we all, as ministers, we all live in farming communities and have all been involved with farming, actually, as the ministers in the department. So we're very much in it and are talking about it and thinking about it all the time. So it is genuinely a co-design evolutionary process, but it's not easy. And I think farmers are being both very brave and very tolerant as we go through this process.
Brilliant.
I mean, I genuinely do.
Super. The clock is ticking so loudly. It's giving me sort of slight headache. But we've got 3 more questions, and I would like us to wrap them up within the next 5 minutes or so. That will also include your final statement. So while I get the 2 questions in the Q&A lined up, may I ask Professor David Main to ask his question, please?
Hi, the Minister. I'd like to, and I think your part of your responsibilities is gene editing and that story, and obviously you've had a constantly been running a consultation on that. Do you? I'm just intrigued. What do you think the public reaction is going to be towards gene editing? Whether they persuaded of the benefits, understand the risks, and how that relates to the Global Britain policy agenda of being we're fantastic.
Well, gene editing is something, as you say, we've closed the consultation on fairly recently, and we're looking very carefully at the results. I think it's fair to say that the public is very guided by retailers on this. The retailers are keeping their powder dry. We've been in quite good conversations with them. I'm getting vibes that people are quite willing to consider the idea in the plant space, but less willing in the animal space, as it were. I want to push on that and just keep checking and testing, because of course some of the really big animal welfare improvements are to be made in the animal space. For example, selecting sex, so you don't have to destroy a large number of neonate poultry, for example, is one aspect that I think we in all conscience have got to consider. So I think it's right that we look seriously at it. Gene editing was happening, it was evolving, and then it was stopped abruptly overnight by a European court decision, which I think was unexpected by our industry. So I think there are people who are extremely keen to press on quickly with this. We are going to have to take our time. We are going to have to bring people with us on this evolution. But I think it's right that we have the conversation. It is also right that we start to talk about, I mean, as you know, most animal feed in the UK is grown with GM products, which are a whole different ball game. We don't talk about that. We eat the products, but I think it's right that the conversation should be properly transparent and evidence-led at all times. We have a really fantastic departmental scientist, Gideon Henderson, who actually has been very involved in the comms on this with academics and with retailers. And I think that has been reassuring. If we take one thing from the pandemic, it's that we need to involve science in proper tested science at all levels of government decision making. Sorry, Charlotte, I could go on for hours about GE.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you so much. So we've had questions from students and staff, and now we've got a couple of questions from Q&A session, from the Q&A box rather. So the first one is by Iris, and if I can get the attention of Tom Slattery, you need to unmute yourself and prepare to ask your question. So Iris, over to you. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. I am a master's student doing sustainable agriculture and food security. I'm really interested in how the Minister is planning to address small-scale farmers, so people who can potentially grow local vegetables and fruit, but who are currently not really classed as a farm because they're under 12 acres. I wonder how you could help with that.
Iris, we're for a start, that's me, where I live, not on our family farm, which is a couple of miles away. Yes, I was talking to a horticultural roundtable this afternoon about farmers such as those. Of course, they haven't really ever received BPS, or not much BPS, the smaller farmer. So this is a new area for government, and at the moment we have restricted people to get involved to the pilots for those who already receive BPS, just because we have so much to do and it was simpler to do it that way. But I think it is right, I'm not making any promises, but I definitely think it's right that in the horticultural space in particular, we look at whether we need to include much smaller farms. It will depend. We don't want to support hobby farmers or people who do it for fun. We want to support commercial farms, I suspect. So without having made the policy, I suspect that would be the baseline.
That's an interesting distinction between hobby farming and commercial farming, which is quite important. Thank you very much. Tom Slattery, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Minister, for taking some time to answer all these questions. My background is I'm also an MSc student at the RAU. I'm focusing on agricultural technology and specifically the role of technology in sustainable and regenerative farming. I had a few questions, but obviously we're short on time. I think my main one was, it didn't seem to be anything in the current documentation on the inclusion of agroforestry in either the transition plan or ELMS, and I'd just be really keen to know if that's something which
there is
going to get included.
That's my fault, Tom, for not mentioning it. The tree schemes and the forestry schemes are already in existence. And while we are working towards a way of making them more seamlessly involved, as it were, with our future farming policies, they're not, at the moment, they're relatively separate. What I do think I need to emphasize is that woodland is going to be a really key part of almost everything that is done. It will not exclusively, hedges will be both hedges and a bit of scrub and also some trees, but really trees are at the heart. We have an incredibly ambitious tree planting programme, as you know, as government at the moment. So trees are going to have to pop up all over the place. Does that start you off? Was there anything specific you wanted to ask, Tom? Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. Minister, could you perhaps just give us a 1 minute wrap up while we
yeah, sure.
come to the close?
Yes, well, there were so many questions and I feel I've skated over, but we haven't got long enough. It's been really, really good to be with you all. I can't wait till I can come and see you in Cirencester. I am incredibly energized by some of the things that you've asked. You've obviously got loads of new and fresh ideas. I do think that the industry is coping very well with change, but I also think that the new generation of farmer and advisor is going to be critical to the way that we evolve. And it is really, really important that you stick your oar in and make your point and have your ideas and ask for help and innovate wherever you can.
Thank you, Minister, for what was, I think everyone here is going to say, a tour de force, actually, because you've managed to answer an incredibly broad range of questions, which have covered a really important, diverse set of topics, ranging from food waste and insects, which is a really important, I think food waste is a really important area, to, to the importance of fundamental products like wool, which in the Cotswolds have been part of our heritage. And what always strikes me is how many of those traditional methods are going to come back. But I think what I did hear from talking to you is how what's happened with COVID is going to be so important in the implementation of this scheme, in that you're going to need to bring together your scientists, but critically the communicators, because what I think you do so well, but also we need to do well, is to communicate to the public if we're going to bring on board some of those innovations. And I was struck, I don't know how many people read a piece by a professor in the Sunday Times about the carbon impact of what you eat, and I came away from it feeling incredibly confused. And I thought, this is the real risk, isn't it, of cheese is going to do this and meat is going to do that. And I think, as you say, it's everybody joining together to provide those evidence-based approaches, which you've done today, is it's getting the evidence for the public. So thank you again, and I hope that if your daughter's still interested, she'll come and visit us, and you will actually come.
Oh, they've been. Both my daughters have been. I think you're getting them at postgraduate level, but there's definitely a plan.
Yeah, well, you've seen our postgraduate students today, and I hope.
I know they're great. I'm gonna go and enthuse about them all.
They are extraordinarily talented, and coming to this actually enables me to meet them, which I don't do enough of because you spend your days doing other things. But thank you again, and I'll hand you now back to Charlotte. And I know Charlotte at Lord Bathurst would be ready to probably say the final word after you. So this is an impromptu change to the schedule. Is that okay, Charlotte?
Oh, fantastic. Oh, wow. What a good surprise that is.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Price, for opening and closing this, or well, not quite closing because Lord Bathurst is going to close it. But thank you anyway for your remarks. Thank you, Minister, for taking time out to come visit us virtually, of course, and for sharing with us all things Elms and other matters. I'm now going to whiz through a series of thanks. Thank you to the VC's office staff for helping make this event happen. Thank you to the RAU marketing team, Professor David Main, Professor Tom McMillan, Rebecca Atterbury-Thomas, Becky, Lisa Williams Van Dyke, both from the events team, and Nick Fox, who's been ensconced in his tech den and kept us all plugged in. Thank you very much, and over to Lord Bathurst.
Minister, thank you so much for speaking and answering so many questions, and excellent questions that they certainly were from all the students. One item I do think we need to think about, and you mentioned that trees are going to be at the heart of everything. We need to know how to manage trees and how to look after them. It's all
and not all trees are equal.
Not all trees are equal, but I know there have been millions of trees planted over this winter period. We have seen a very dry spring. You will have lost a lot of those trees. One item that is going to need to be put in place are proper tree shelters, not these small spiral ones. There are a lot of deer. I've heard that there's an estimated increased population of about 40% of deer for this year because of the market of venison disappearing. So we really need to look as to how these trees are going to be managed. I'm fully in support of these woolen tree shelters. I've got two which I'm trying at the moment, and we'll see.
How exciting! I've never actually seen one.
They look far better than a lot of the other shelters that we have around. And I'd be delighted to talk to, I think her name was Katie Drury, who wants the contact details for the supplier of these shelters, or indeed for her to see, well, two of them that I've got. But Minister, thank you so much for coming, and we will be extremely interested to see as to where you go, or where we go ahead with this. But I am concerned that we do need to have details. I'm getting a new bull in on Saturday. Hopefully we'll have calves this time next year. They're going to be there for 18 months to 2 years before they actually get marketed. I need to know where I'm going to be and what options are open for myself as a farmer. So we do need to get some of this detail.
Well, I hope I've explained why we can't tell you everything, but I hope I've also explained that the entry level is for everybody, and very much, you know, if you're on BPS, you should be in that. And then you as a livestock farmer will almost certainly want to be on the animal health and welfare pathway, or you may want to choose one of the other items. There will be something that suits every type of farm.
Yes, but it's going to be no replacement for BPS in your words, or full replacement for BPS in your words.
In money terms, you may do better on some sorts of farms, but you won't on every sort of farm. The pot is the same. It's how we cut it.
Yes. I don't want to get involved in this, but thanks so much for speaking to us, answering questions. Thank you.
It's been great to be here. Bye-bye, everybody.